All right, welcome everybody to the Monday Mastermind. Kyle Handy here, and I am a real estate agent out of San Antonio, Texas. And tonight I'm going to be covering with you guys how to host an open house for another agent. I've actually been in the real estate business about 11 years myself. I've hosted tons of open houses. I can't even count how many I've done over those 11 years. And one of the common misconceptions that I think a lot of agents have, especially starting out, is having to host open houses on only your own listings. And if that were the case, simply I wouldn't even be in the business most likely anymore because I'll just tell you about 90% of my open houses that I've ever done have been on other agents' listings. And I'm going to share with you guys why that is. I'm going to share how you can do that. And then also I'm going to give some tips on just kind of maximizing open houses and how to get the most out of them. So stick with me. Try and keep this one about 30 minutes or so to cover everything. So follow along. If you got any questions, definitely put them in the comments and I'll be happy to respond to those afterwards. And so that being said, I have created a little bit of a guide for us to follow along, also for you to copy down once we get into the scripts side of it. But that being said, let me go ahead and share my screen. There we go, so you can see it. So the topic is how to host an open house for another agent and generate leads every single week. So one of the great things about open houses is that one, they're very inexpensive to do. They're a great way that you can generate, at most, well, I won't tell you what the most you can do because I'm sure there's somebody that's done more, but on average, what I would see was about 15 to 25 people come through my door each and every single week. And that was one of the things that, really started out my lead generation side of this business. Was doing open houses. And so, quickly that got into Facebook lead ads and doing all sorts of things that cost a lot of money. But in the beginning, when I didn't have a lot of money, I was just trying to kind of bootstrap it. And I was doing open houses every single weekend, sometimes twice a weekend. So Saturdays, Sundays. And so I'm going to be sharing with you guys all of kind of my best practices, but then really, if you're going to be doing them every single week, and especially in the beginning, you probably don't have enough listings of your own, or even at your own brokerage possibly, to be able to kind of handle all of that. So you're going to have to look elsewhere and you're going to have to find other ways and reach out to other agents to make sure that you're getting that consistent open house every single week. And so I'm going to share kind of my scripts, the emails that I send out, to be able to, reach out to other agents and see if they're open to me doing that. And then I'm going to kind of also share kind of the setup and everything that I do for those open houses. So let's go ahead and just jump into it. Here's the three things we're going to cover. First off, the criteria for open houses that I have. So these are, the different things that I look for as far as setting up an open house, like which ones am I going to actually request of the other agents. I'm not just, willy-nilly going after any open house, or just trying to get the one that, one of my friends has that, he's had for 4 months. Like, I'm very specific and strategic with exactly which open houses that I'm going to be willing to spend my time at. And that's something that's super important. I know a lot of people get burnt out on open houses because maybe they feel like they haven't had the success in the past doing them. And I'll tell you, there is a better way of doing open houses. If you've done them with, only one person walking through your door or a few people walking through your door, follow along with me today. And maybe there's something that you might have been missing that could help you improve the people that come through the door. So we're going to talk about the criteria, the scripts to request those open houses from the other agents, and then also actually hosting the open house and some tips that come with hosting that open house. So let's jump right into the open house criteria. All right, so this is what I'm looking for. I think, the cool thing about open houses is that it's going to give you a lot more, than just leads. If you do them right, it's actually going to be a lot of branding that you're building into your business as well. And not only are you going to be getting buyer leads, but you also have the opportunity to get a lot of seller leads. I think that's another misconception that a lot of agents have, is that by doing open houses, you're just getting buyer leads. I will tell you, I've gotten so many seller deals and seller leads from doing open houses. There's a couple extra steps that you're going to want to do, and there's a couple little intricacies that I think are important to note if you want to be able to get those seller leads eventually. But if you do them kind of like what we're going to talk about tonight, you will get seller leads and you will get seller deals from doing open houses. All right, so first and foremost, you've heard me talk about this many, many times. It's so important that you build a niche, or that you have a niche that you're going to work, right? So you got to pick, like, is there a zip code? Is there a neighborhood? If it's, a big enough neighborhood, is there a certain mileage radius that you just need to pick, like a 10-mile radius around this area or this neighborhood, right? Like, but either way, pick that as your niche. And of course, there's all sorts of different niches too. You're going to hear that term thrown around a lot in real estate. It could be like, oh, my niche is first-time home buyers. Well, it's kind of hard to target, right? It's a lot easier to target a location niche. Even though Facebook's made it a little bit more difficult over the years, you still can target a certain radius within an area, and so that's still a very valid point. And so when you have a niche, the cool thing is it makes everything so much more simple, in my opinion. You can kind of focus your marketing efforts. You can focus where you want to host your open houses at, and then you start to become the expert. People see you all over the place in that particular niche, and it's a lot more cost effective to market to a niche than it is just to throw marketing out there everywhere. So you're going to, first off, when you're picking which open house you want to do, you want to make sure that it's located in your niche, right? Certain zip code, certain neighborhood, certain mileage radius. It's kind of funny because I, more often than not, right, like if a home that I've got listed doesn't happen to be in my niche, like if I got that listing, maybe it was a referral or somehow just somebody heard of me and it wasn't really in my niche area, oftentimes I won't actually do the open house on it on my own listing. I would actually have another agent who prefers to do open houses in that area do an open house on it, even though it's my listing, and I'll target an actual open house that's in my niche over doing it at my own open house. And of course, it depends on the seller and kind of the comfort level there. I don't want to, put the seller off or anything like that. If they think that I'm not going to do it myself, in that case, I still would. But for the most part, I do try and talk them through kind of the process and let them know that I've got a team or I've got agents that are willing to do it, that kind of thing. And then I'll go focus on one in my niche. It's that important because I'll kind of share with you why. And you'll see a little bit as far as my tips. I use branded signs, right? As far as, it's got my logo, my name, my face, directionals on there. And so whenever I'm putting these up week in and week out in my target niche, sellers see that, people driving by see it all the time, and they're going to start to think pretty quickly, actually, that, man, Kyle's got his hold on this market, right? Like I see his signs every single week, around this neighborhood or around this zip code. And that's when the power starts to come in. If you only do, an open house in this area one week, and then you go over to the other side of town the next week, and you might come back to that first one like a month later or 2 months later, you're never going to build any kind of branding, and nobody's going to recognize you. And so that's actually just something that I think is more important than even just doing the open house and getting those leads that come through, is building yourself as that expert in that area. And that is what happens when you do a branded sign, you do a open house consistently every week in the same area. All right, so that's an important one. One other last point to note is that one of the cool things that I'll get when people come to my open houses is they actually will say, hey, I'm not really interested in this home or in this neighborhood, but I see your signs all the time. I just wanted to come and meet you. I don't have an agent. I'd like to work with you. I see your stuff all the time, right? That is something you're going to hear if you do them in the same area. You're going to hear that from buyers. You're going to hear it from sellers. Sellers will come to your open house and say, hey, I'm not even buying a home. I actually own a home in this neighborhood already, but I constantly see your signs in here. I just wanted to come and meet you and let you know that I might be selling my home soon and see if, we could start to work together. That is the type of stuff that happens when you do it in the same area all the time. All right, moving on. So the other thing that you want to look for is ideally you want it to be in a non-gated neighborhood. The least amount of barriers to, hurdles for somebody to get across to get into your house, the better. And so, having a non-gated neighborhood is great. If you have a gated neighborhood, you definitely got to have some kind of signage up that lets them know how they get into the gate, or make sure that the HOA will open the gate for the times that you're hosting that open house. And so, but just make sure that that has been thought out and that is actually something that you look for when you're doing your search on the MLS. I know on my MLS, I can go in, look for the neighborhood amenities and make sure if it's got controlled access or if it doesn't. I obviously select ones that do not have controlled access. So that way it's a lot easier. I prefer under 14 days on market, preferably under 7 if you can, just because one, homes tend to go quick, especially in the price point you're going to be wanting to do an open house in. And if it's on the market for a lot longer, it's probably not as desirable of a house, right? Plus you want to just get that buzz going that it is a new house, right? And you're like right out there on this fresh listing. And so you're going to get a lot more people that have, seen pictures of it online. Maybe they're searching Zillow or realtor.com, but they want to come check it out now. You don't want to get the one that's 30 days old and, all the people have already been through it that want to go through it, right? So that's kind of one of those things. Again, the earlier days on market, the better. Ideally, what I do is I get on between like Monday and Wednesday. Onto my MLS, I look at what's been listed in the last 24 to 48 hours, and then I just start reaching out to those agents, and I'm going to show you how you do that here in a second. And I just say, hey, I'd like to set up an open house for this weekend coming up. Am I able to do so? And you'll see the full script here in a little bit, but I target those. I basically put those emails out Monday through Wednesday. That way I've got at least one locked up, if not 2 locked up for the weekend, because you just never know if something's going to fall through or whatnot. You also might want to have a friend if they're willing to do an open house also. Y'all can do, try and do 2. That way y'all are out there the same weekend. It's a little bit more fun, whatever. That's just another kind of thing that you can do. So make sure too that whatever listing you're targeting has great professional photos taken of it. Don't choose the listing that, even though it's a new listing, it's got like the worst pictures in the world. They're not lit well. They're not a professional, photography. I would not choose that for myself, because people are going to come to your open house based on kind of what they can see online, based on the pictures. And so if they're not good pictures, it's probably not going to be a good listing, probably not going to be a good open house. So I stay away from that. Of course, I try and stay around at or below the average price for the city. Now, you may be thinking, well, yeah, but I want to get into luxury. I want to get into this or that. The thing with that, though, is what I've experienced when I go into a higher price point is typically you'll still get people that come through the door, but the amount of represented buyers are much higher. And I don't know if it's just because when you're looking to buy in, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 price range, typically you already have friends that are real estate agents, right? Whereas if you're looking like in my target market, our average price is around $250. If I stick my open houses to like the $175 to $225 range, I tend to get a lot more people that come through that don't have a real estate agent. So it's a lot better for you. Then close to major streets and intersections. And this kind of has to do with the same thing as non-gated neighborhood. It's just a lower barrier of entry. If the house that you have isn't like pushed back, all weird, having to take lefts and rights inside the neighborhood, it is better if you can find one that like the home is maybe just a couple turns off of whatever that major street is that you're going to try and funnel people into. Doesn't always have to be the case, but if you had a couple that you were on the fence about, that is what I would give the nod to. You'll get just a lot more people that can make it if it's just right off either a main street, main intersection, main highway. So just a few other things to look for. All right, next we're going to get into the scripts to request, or the script that I use to request these open houses to agents that are other agents. So what you'll see is what I tend to do is, again, I go through what my criteria is. I figure out about 5 homes that meet that criteria, and I send this email out to the listing agent for all 5 of those homes. And the reason is you're not going to get all 5 of them to tell you yes that you can do one. Some won't read the emails. Some will read the emails and say no, they don't want you to do it. And then the few that, read it and say yes, you might get 1 or 2 out of those 5, right? That's kind of how I do it. That's the kind of the ratio that I see. And this is the email that I send. Hey, John, great new listing over at 123 Main Street. Would you be open to me hosting an open house either this Saturday or Sunday from 11 to 3 p.m.? I get straight to the point, right? Agents are busy. Like, I just want to let them know this is what I want to do. These are the times. So that way it's already out there. They kind of know like this would be the time that I would do it from. I host an open house nearly every week, so I'm extremely professional when it comes to taking the highest care with your listing. I'll set up my own signs, flyers, and marketing for the open house. I just need you to create the open house in MLS, Realtor.com, and Zillow since the listing is under your login. It only takes a couple minutes, and I can help walk you through if needed. I'll give you any and all feedback so that you may relay to the seller. The past agents I've hosted open houses for have all been extremely happy with the outcome. I've even been able to procure a few deals from buyers that show up at the open house. I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have. Please let me know, as I'm also reaching out to a few other agents with similar new listings in the area. Best regards, Kyle Handy. Put your brokerage, put your phone number. There you go. You have it. That's it. Simple, to the point. And what's good is it gives gives them a reason why, they would allow you to do this. They don't want to trust their listing with just any old agent, right? So put in the benefits of using you, that you obviously do this before. You're going to set up the marketing, handle it all. You're going to give them feedback, all that good stuff. So I think when you send an email out like this, it's going to give you a higher likelihood of getting that agent to say yes. And so again, send that to 5 agents that their listings meet your criteria of what we're looking for, what we talked about before. And then I'm telling you, you'll get 1 or maybe even 2, and then you can just determine, again, because you put in there you're reaching out to a few other agents. So for some reason, if you get 2 of them that say, yeah, I'd love for you to do it, just say, oh, you know what? I actually got 1 other person that said yes. I'll let you know, maybe I can do this one the following weekend if your listing is still available. Or if you can find a fellow agent that wants to do another listing, boom, now you just hook them up. You let them know that, hey, they can go out and do this one and you do the other one. And or again, if you wanted to do 2 in a weekend, you want to do 1 on a Sunday, 1 on a Saturday, now you can do both of them. So those are the scripts that I use there. Next, I'm gonna give you some actual tips on hosting the open house. All right. So here's kind of a few of the tips. First off, run Facebook ads, $5 a day if that's all you want to spend. You don't have to spend a ton, because you're going to target that niche market, that radius, right, around that open house. I forget the statistic, but it's something like, majority of buyers buy another house within I think it's like 10 or 12 mile radius of their current home. So if you just do a radius, right, of wherever that open house is, you're probably going to hit most of the people that would consider that home. So even $5 a day, $10 a day would be fine. I don't do it any earlier than 72 hours, and sometimes you could even do it just like 48 hours. And then I usually stop the open house ad right at the time that the open house is taking place. Because chances are, if they see it and, the open house is already going on, they're not going to come. You could have the ad stop like right at the end of the open house or like an hour before. There are ways that you can set stop times or end times to your ads. So just kind of put something there that makes sense for you. All right, I like to arrive about an hour and a half early, and I make sure that the seller knows that I'll be there an hour and a half early. The reason is I actually stop at the house first before I do anything else, before I even put signs out or anything, just because I want to assess the home, make sure it's like looking okay. I've shown up, and of course, some sellers are great, some sellers are a little not as organized, not as clean or whatever, and you got to do a little bit of damage control just to make sure that the home is in tip-top shape. So not only it might not be your listing, right, but it's going to reflect on you. If seller comes through there and they see it, and maybe they're kind of gauging if they're going to use you as their agent, and they come through a dirty house or something like that, again, it might not 100% fall on your shoulders, but it still might not look great versus if the house is straightened up a little bit better. And so if you get there an hour and a half early, and if the seller's still there, you can kind of coach them, guide them on if anything needs to be straightened up. Or if they're not there, you might just need to kind of do a little bit of straightening yourself. Just be sure to let the actual listing agent know that, hey, this is what I'm going to do. And don't just totally, redo their house, but just kind of straighten up a few things here and there. All right, so once you've done that, then at that point, I go back out and I start to put all my signs out. So I'll start to go and, put signs on the corners, the major intersections, all that good stuff. I actually got, I think it's on the next slide. What I do is actually the night before, I print out a Google Maps of right around the house, the home that I'm going to be doing for the open house. And I actually map out and put where I'm going to place all of the directionals for the next day. So for that morning, that way I'm not out there the morning of and unsure of where I need to put my directional signs. I get on there at night, the night before, I see where the house is. I find out where the most of the traffic is going to be driving, the main streets. And then I put, okay, I need a left turn here, a right turn here, a straight ahead here. And so that way, one, I know how many directionals that I'm going to need, how many left turns I'm going to need, how many right turns I'm going to need, how many straights I'm going to need. And then I also, for me, my kind of just rule of thumb is I like to have a minimum of 20 directionals out for any open house. So, make sure that's one of the most important thing, and I'll talk about it here in a little bit, is how many directional signs you have out. So definitely think that through. Make sure you're not just waiting until the day of to figure out directionals because it'll make a mess and it'll take you a lot longer. So have your map ready, go out there, put your directionals out. And then what I do is I actually, after that, go and start knocking doors around my listing. So some agents, and if you want to do it and you can dedicate 2 days to one open house, then do it. You want to go out there the day before and like knock doors and knock 50, 60, 100 doors. By all means, feel free to do that. I'm not going to say not to. For me, I just wanted to spend 1 day like out there doing it, unless I was doing 2 open houses. In which case then I would do 2 days, but I wouldn't go out there the day before. I would just go knock doors the morning of the open house. And so I would always knock doors 5 left, 5 right, and 10 across from wherever my open house was. And if I had more time, I would do more, right? 10 across, 10 left, 10 right, 20 across, right? You, of course, at least get the ones that are in the vicinity of your listing. Those are the most likely people to come to your listing. But either way, what I remember first doing that and actually knocking doors, I was extremely nervous and, thinking people were going to be very unwelcoming of it. But quite surprisingly, especially like a Saturday morning, I'd catch people and they would be receptive. They were like, oh, great. That's awesome. We might stop by. Some people would, some people wouldn't. Some people would just, tell you right there at the door, like, that's awesome. Actually, we were thinking about selling our house, give me your card, I'll call you or whatever, right? And you get their information, follow up. But don't let door knocking be a scary thing. That is one of the ways that you're going to get seller leads from all of this. So that, along with just the branding and building your branding in that area to where people are going to come in and visit you, those are kind of those 2 ways that you get those seller leads that I think a lot of people are looking for. Make sure you've got at least a printed sign-in sheet, or if you've got an iPad, something to dedicate to actually having an app running on it at all times. Then you could use an iPad with the certain app. There's an open house app. It's literally called open house app. There's one called Block Party, or like I use KV Cores. That's the CRM that I use. And it actually has an open house app built into it to where when people sign in, it sends that lead straight into my CRM system. So, you could use any of those different types of methods. Make sure to bring a Bluetooth speaker with you for just, some kind of soft music to play throughout the home. If you're in Texas like myself, I usually put it on country music. You can put it on whatever you want, though. Just I wouldn't put anything explicit, of course. But don't have it be like an open house where somebody walks through the front door and it's just quiet except for you talking. That's very awkward. It's not a good ambiance. Bring refreshments, water, snacks, cookies. Those are pretty much what I would bring. I'd bring little bags of chips. I'd bring little waters, and I'd just bring a cookie tray, right? It might cost you $15 at most for all of those. Business cards, of course, have a ton of those. Have your buyer packages with you and have your seller books with you. So, these seller books is what I bring to whenever I go to a listing presentation. It's just minus, I don't have the CMA in there, right? So like it talks about like what my marketing plan is, all that kind of stuff. So I can hand that out to people when they come by. And I also got a buyer package, which is just a short little 5-page booklet that just has kind of some information about buying a home, has some information about me. I think those are the two packages, two little booklets, if you will, that you should definitely have in your kind of repertoire. And so anyways, I've got, like I said, those two are the ones that I hand out most often in addition to my business cards. So make sure that you have that. I know at the brokerage that I'm with, we actually have a subscription that they pay for it's like a breakthrough broker type of service where they've got buyer presentations, listing presentations built in. If you don't have a service like that, or if you're not with my brokerage, eXp Realty, then you could look into just going out there and getting breakthrough broker for yourself. I don't think it's too expensive, or you can get something like KCM, which is keepingcurrentmatters.com. And you can get some buyer and seller packages that way as well. So very easy ways to do it. You don't have to go reinvent the wheel. They're already out there. Just go subscribe to one of those services. And, they're like templated services where you can put your brokerage, your name, your number, all that kind of stuff, and it'll pop it all in there. And now you look very professional. So make sure to have those with you. Yeah, here we go. So here's where we talked about the 20 branded directional signs. If you're going to do this, you're going to do this consistently every single week, it is worth the extra money you're going to spend for branded directional signs. That is truly the whole benefit, in my opinion, of doing open houses, is that I can get out there in front of people. They'll see me just a whole nother way, right? They're already going to see my ads running on Facebook. They're already most likely, and I've talked about this in the past, going to be receiving some form of direct mail from me, right? Postcards, something like that. Like if they're in my niche market, they're getting those. And now they're going to see my open house signs up around their neighborhood. That's 3 ways minimum that they're probably going to have interacted with something that I've given to them. And once they see that 3 different ways, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, this guy's everywhere. So that is the big benefit. So make sure they're branded. Spend a little bit more money, invest in your business, get you some branded directional signs. I would recommend getting 50, right? I usually do like 15, 15, and 15. As far as like 15 left, 15 right, 15 straight ahead. And then if, I've got 5 left over or whatever the next bracketed price range gives me, I might just get just generic, just like open house to put in the yard in addition to, a straight sign or something like that. But if you don't have extras left over, you can use the straight sign and just point it like going into your house for your listing. I know a lot of times people buy the big signs or the feather flags or whatever, and those are nice. They get expensive. And it might be something that if you can prove out that you're doing this consistently, it's worth buying them. They do get people's attention. I think they're a little bit more inviting when people see those big feather flags out there. But it's just something to consider. If you don't have that, just put the standard, straight ahead open house to point to go into your open house so people know which house it is once they've arrived. Lastly, make sure that you've got, some kind of thing to catch people's eyes, especially out there on the main streets. So like streamers, balloons, pinwheels, something to basically catch people's attention. Once you get them into the neighborhood, it may not be as important. So you don't got to go out there and buy balloons for every single sign that you're putting out there, but definitely put it on the ones that are on the main streets because people are typically driving faster on those streets. So you need something to catch their attention a little bit easier. All right, next that's where I talked about the Google map the night before. Determine your placement and which directionals are going to be needed. Email blast your database with open house info. Let people know, even if they're in your database, they might not be looking at that particular neighborhood or anything. Just let them know you're hosting an open house and let them help you. They might share it with some of their friends or coworkers, but they also, if they're a seller down the road, they're going to see like, oh my gosh, Kyle's always doing an open house on a listing, right? Like that looks good to them because they think that you're busy, you're productive. So make sure don't discount your email list as well. I tend to keep the front door open or cracked. If it's, a hot day or something like that, it might just be cracked because I don't want all the AC going out of the house. But if it's a nice cool day out, definitely have it open. I think it's more inviting for people to come into the home. So that's important. And then be sure to have copies of the seller's disclosure, survey, neighborhood CCRs, prior inspections, and any other useful information to a buyer. And notice how I said copies, like, print out copies. Make sure that, this is something that you need to do ahead of time, like get that from, the list agent. Make sure that you print them out at your house before you arrive, and you have copies to give to people. So that way, it's not just to show them. Definitely have an extra copy to show people, like maybe in a binder where it's all on those kind of pamphlets where you can slide them into the clear plastic deals, but then also have physical copies that you can give to people if they want. I'm not saying you have to give that out to every single person that comes through the door, but definitely have copies to give to the people that do want those. It just makes you look more professional. Lastly, I don't have anything on here as far as safety, but definitely be safe. There's been a lot more stuff in the news about open houses, and take somebody with you if you don't feel safe. And of course, let people know that you're doing an open house, but just be safe out there. Make sure that you've thought of that. You have a plan as far as open houses go. So that's pretty much it as far as what I wanted to cover. If you've got any questions, if you've got any comments, anything that I didn't mention that you think is a great tip that you'd like to share with our community here, definitely put it in the comment, and I'll love to respond to it, love to answer any questions that are out there. But thanks again for joining for the Monday Mastermind tonight. Sorry I missed last week, guys. I was literally almost like, I couldn't even walk. I felt so sick last Monday, and so I had no way. I was asleep for like, I don't know, probably 7 or 8 hours during the middle of the day, and I was just out last Monday. So, but I'm glad to be back, feeling much better this week, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one next Monday. So in the meantime, have a great one, guys. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.